I honor him tonight by whatever direction he goes in. I want to take his time and sharing from his heart. But guys, how many know Victoria Hamilton? How many know Victoria? This is her stepfather. This is her daddy, and I didn't know two and two after about 3 months of her going, and she's been raised here, and the rest of her family has been involved, and his little boys I teach in Sunday school, and has a blast. So let's give it up for Mr. James Riggs.
Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it for Pastor Steve letting me come and talk. This is something that's new for me. It's amazing to see this many kids, teenagers. Sorry, no offense, please don't mean that words. Here tonight to represent, your faith, what you stand by and what you believe in. That man that you have right back there, Pastor Steve, amazing man. I've had several chances to sit down and talk with him. Him and Pastor Carlton is two amazing men of God that really have a heart for the Lord and a heart for you, and what you were meant to do and what great things lie in store for you. So wherever he leads, you guys know you're just going in the right direction. Tonight, Pastor Steve asked me if I just kind of share basically my testimony with you guys, and then I have a word to share with you guys if that's acceptable to you. Yes. It's something I was given a couple months ago and didn't really realize why. And now I do. I'm like, wow, all right, cool. So here we go. By the looks of me, you can tell I don't look like a Christian. You're cookie cutter Christian, okay? Which is fine. I wasn't raised in a Christian home. My parents, they said that they believed in God. We attended church about 5 times from the time I was born to the time I was 18. We were your typical ones who would show up occasional Easter, occasional Christmas time, like a lot of families out there now. I grew up knowing that there was something more, just wasn't sure what was out there. I thought I knew that there was a God, but really didn't have a clue, to where I could be led, what amazing things really lie out there with Him and with what you guys, hopefully will experience as well. I have a lot of notes, sorry. We would pray before the major meals, the Thanksgiving meals, the Christmas meals, and if I'm lying, please God strike me or like me. We prayed from a newspaper clipping that was on the refrigerator all year long. I would say, son, go get the clipping. I'd get it, sit down, and she'd say, all right, read it. Okay. That was our prayer. It just was what it was. So I didn't really grow up knowing a lot about God, a lot about the Bible. I knew it was a book. I knew it collected dust on her shelf, and that was, my mom used to press flowers in it. So, not growing up really in the Word, I went off to college, and college is college, especially for someone who's lost. I had no direction, didn't know what I wanted to do. I went to school and thought, I want to be a doctor. Seemed like a cool thing to do, and from reading books and watching movies, being a doctor, you made a lot of money, and people just thought, you were amazing. Well, so I delved a lot into the sciences. A lot of creationism wasn't really a big topic with what I did and where I was. We learned a lot about evolution. Evolution was everything. Charles Darwin and all that nonsense. Going forward from school, I came out not really knowing, really what I wanted to do. I excelled in my classes when I was at college, but then something just didn't make sense. I just wasn't sure why I wasn't being fulfilled. So I left school, came home, took some more classes at community college just because I could. I was bored. I ended up becoming a paramedic, and I was in the medical field, and I worked on the streets in Richmond and in a little town called Dinwiddie. It's where actually Victoria is right now. And it made me question my faith a lot. Why would children suffer? What lets people have cancer? Why is this? Why is this necessary? If God loves everybody, why are these things here? And I can remember the pivotal turning point for me. I hadn't been to church in forever, pretty much. The pivotal turning point, I was riding on an ambulance one day. It was early afternoon during the summertime. We got a call for a child struck by a vehicle. We showed up. He was a 9-year-old little boy. I found out his name was Kevin. He was laying on the ground, unconscious. He was dead. He had no pulse, wasn't breathing. He had a huge laceration on his scalp. You could stick your finger in and feel his skull. That was the first time in a long time that I had actually prayed. I said, God, just please do something. Through whatever, happened, we ended up getting a pulse back. He wasn't breathing, we got a pulse back, so he was technically alive. We shipped him up to the trauma hospital in Richmond. Only to my much dismay, I found out 12 hours later, he died. So needless to say, that was just a real kick in the teeth for me. Made me question why even more. Why did you let this kid even come back if you just didn't take him anymore? What kind of God are you? And there are a lot of people out there today that still think and ask the same questions. So I continued on. I got married, and we started attending church. It was a good old Southern Baptist country church. I attended regularly every Sunday because that's what my wife wanted me to do. So we went, and I began to find that things were becoming easier. The more faithful I went to church, the more I delved into the Bible. I was finding that it was a good thing. It really brought comfort to my soul. Still had many questions because I just didn't know. I'm not that smart. So one day, to this day, I don't remember the sermon. I have no idea what he was talking about, but I felt a tangible grief and sadness, but a joy at the same time. And I now know that it was finally the Spirit working. And I got up and went up and accepted Christ. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, but also the worst. I accepted Christ as my Savior. That never changed. But I found out, which some may have experienced, some may experience in the future, that Christians, or those who say they're Christians, aren't all that they appear. My wife at the time, we are now divorced. We started going through some things. She was led off astray from our marriage, and so be it. It ended up being for a good thing. And through the gossip mill and everything else, the preacher, I found out, was talking about me, condemning me for what I had done when I was completely innocent of anything. And it's sad, but I had family that went to that church, aunts, uncles, extended relatives, so I walked away from the church, and I was done with church. I didn't need religion. I didn't want to be around religion. If I wanted to worship, I could go out in the backyard, sit under a tree, and I could talk to God just by myself. I didn't need anybody else to show me where I was going or what to do. And we had the book, it's the instruction manual right there in your hand. So what more do you need, right? So with that being said, I continued on working, still seeing the same garbage day after day. Death, disease, famine, everything that you could think of is just horrible. I finally got on my knees one night and said, Lord, I'm done with women, I'm done with church, but if you have something else in mind, it's up to you, because I'm not looking, I'm not trying to find anybody, I don't want to go to church, it's up to you. Within 30 days, and I couldn't make this if I were trying, I ended up meeting my wife, who is not just my wife, she's my soulmate. She's amazing. You guys will meet her. You guys will see her eventually. She's amazing. She truly is. She's the one that keeps it all together. We have 5 kids. We have one more on the way. Congratulations. Thank you. We're blessed beyond any measures. And so she was actually there when I was baptized. We were dating at the time, and I invited her. I said, hey, can you come to my baptism? She said, sure, I'd love to. So she came to baptism. We started going to church together. She had a church that we went to regularly. Great place. Everything was wonderful. The pastors were great. But then the calling, I received a call. Not a telephone call. I received a call from God that there was something more that He wanted from me. And He somehow, some way, I still don't have clear direction, but I know it's as far as teaching or preaching or evangelizing. It's something to do with spreading the gospel, which is something we'll talk about in a little bit. And I really got in prayer and I thought, God, have you looked at me? Do you really think people are going to want to listen to me? I mean, come on. I'm not the most approachable guy just by looks, as Pastor Steve told you earlier. I work as an OR nurse. Would you want to see this before you went to sleep? Every day, that's what I do, hey, night-night. So, it's interesting. But hopefully I'll be able to talk to you guys each individually or even as a group. Again, some of the stories that just from the OR itself, seeing the patients before they go off to sleep. Incredible. It's things that you would never think in medicine that you get the opportunity to talk to people, and it's really at their most vulnerable time. But I digress. So she was there for my baptism, and I received a call in my life. Told our pastor. He was a pastor a couple years younger than myself, and he thought, hey, that's great. Come on, you come over for dinner. We'll talk about it. We'll sit down. We sat down. We chatted. We had a great talk, and I think the church, he took over the church that we were in, and it was struggling at the time. I'm not passing judgment because he's a wonderful man, great heart for God, wonderful pastor. His messages were powerful. You'd walk out of there, tears in your eyes, just, wow, this is amazing. But he made the statement one day, Sunday during the service, and he looked over at my wife and myself and he said, I don't have time to foster along somebody who can't give their everything to church. Wow, really? It's going to be like that? Just because I have a bunch of kids, I work a full-time job, I can't live at the church, that you don't want to help me out. So once again, I walked away. I walked away from church, walked away from my call. Fool me once, that whole thing. So I decided to rely on my own wits. I could do it. I proved it. I've saved lives in the street. I can do this. We walked away from church, and we started relying on our own thing. That was when I started working in the operating room. And with that, it was, I had a good job. At the time, I had a wife, 3 beautiful children. But there was really just a deep, deep depression just seeping in. I didn't know what it was. Just said, whatever. So every day I'd come home from work, dreading just going home because, the bills were mounting. We had no clear direction. We lived in a place where we regularly had drive-bys in the front yard, drug deals made, 2 blocks over on the corner. And my kid, I was raising 3 kids in this. So it was okay, and every day it got worse and it got worse. And it was approaching Christmas time, and I actually hatched a plan to get rid of myself. I thought my family could do better with insurance money. I was worth a lot of money dead. So every day I'd drive on the way home from work, I would actually pray. It seems twisted now. I'd pray for the strength just to get it over with, just to do it. I had hatched everything perfectly. I worked 24-hour shifts. I was tired when I got off the hospital. Plenty of bridges. I could just run right into the abutment and be over with. And I figured it was worth spending eternity in hell for my family to be taken care of than to have them see me daily struggling to get out of bed, struggling to be a father, struggling to be a husband who cared. So with that, Christmas Eve, my daughter my son, get the kids confused. There's a lot of them. Don't ask me birthdays, okay. On that Christmas Eve, we needed milk. So I went to the local 7-Eleven. That's where you're supposed to go, right? It's Christmas Eve, there's nobody's open. Sure. I go to 7-Eleven, I get out of the car, and I'm just beat down. This guy comes up to me, he has this gravelly voice. He looks me in the face and says, "Are you a preacher?" No. Really? He said, "You're supposed to be." And we just went on this random tangent, quoting all these Old Testament verses, New Testament verses. I just stood there and I was, what do you say? This guy's out of nowhere just saying, telling me, this is what you're supposed to do. You need to follow the call that God has on your life. I'm like, he's insane. Why does he know this? Well, I know now, obviously, why he knew or what led him to come approach me. And, never met this guy, had never seen him afterwards. Went up and gave him a big old hug, told him, said thank you. I said, you cleared up a lot of answers for me. And I went home, told my wife Melody, and well, not really told her, I kind of blubbered and snotted and snorted all over myself because I couldn't really talk. I was overwhelmed, needless to say, that the Spirit could find its way to talk to me through some random dude standing outside of a 7-Eleven on Christmas Eve. From then on, we realized that this isn't a joke anymore. There's no time like the present to grab what your path is, because God has a plan for each one of you. His plan for me, His plan for Pastor Steve, Jennifer, His plan for all of us. You have to be willing to actually take it, run with it, let Him lead you. Don't rely on your own wits. It's not going to work. I promise you. Okay. So we continued on. We moved up here to Front Royal 4 years ago with $36 in a prayer, and now, like I told you guys, I work for Kaiser Permanente over in Northern Virginia. It's a really great job. We don't want for anything. We have a house that finally fits all of our family, and I am just graduated last May from Liberty with my bachelor's in religion, and I'm in seminary right now with. Should graduate with my master's in Christian ministries this December, and who knows where I'll be going from there. I can only hope that God will show me the way, and we just are willing to follow. And that kind of brings me full circle. It's a little bit about me, a little bit of my family. God has been there for us from the beginning, for my wife and myself, for each of you. He's there. He's not going anywhere. He was there from the beginning. He's going to be there from the end. He's the Alpha and the Omega, right? You guys know this. It's not like I'm teaching you anything new. But it's really hard sometimes when you let your flesh get the better of you. You know that each one of you, all of you guys in high school, yes, no, all of you in high school, middle school, high school, something like that, maybe college. Well, there's something that God gave me a word about, like I told you about 2 months ago, Romans 1:16. It's a great verse that I know that I've given you a CD that had one of the songs. It's a great song. If you want to hear it, Pastor Steve got a copy of it. Romans 1:16 simply says, "For I'm not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes, first to the Jew, then to the Gentile." This verse, if you can grasp your head, you can wrap your head around this. If you can grasp this, you're going to go really far. At my age, it's still hard for me sometimes to share the gospel, even though I know what I'm supposed to do. It's not easy just to walk up to someone and say, "Hey, I'm James. You know God?" Well, it's like you're insane. What? Get out of my face. You guys know that. Could you walk up to one of your friends at school and say, "Hey, what's your name? What's your name?" Clayton. Hi, I'm Clayton. Do you know God? They're going to look at you like, okay, no, right? You can't be afraid. Because God has obviously provided for you guys, right? He's given you salvation. He's given you the keys to the kingdom. There is nothing that you can't do with Him. But you can't keep that to yourself. You have to get out there and, like the song says, we all learned it, well, you guys probably learned in Sunday school, I just learned it from my friends. Let your light shine, this little light of mine, we're gonna let it shine. You gotta really let it get out there, because God isn't ashamed of you. He's not ashamed of me, even though I look ridiculous. Okay? He's not ashamed of any of you guys for who you are, for what you do. We all screw up. It's inevitable. You're not going to be perfect. There's only one of those people that ever lived, and we all know Him now as our Savior, right? So, the gospel itself, it means it's the good news. What is it the good news of? It's the good news of Jesus Christ, right? That's what we really want people to know. We want people to hear about it. We want people to know it. We want people to have their salvation. We want to give them the same gift that we have, right? And it's freely given. God just, if you want it, go take it. But, you know, that the strange thing is that it's so difficult for you guys to share it with people. Because why? What are some of the reasons that you might be afraid of sharing it? Anybody? Fear? Intimidation, embarrassed, right? You don't want people to think you're a completely religious zealot or nut, right? They're all they're completely very real reasons. You know, I talking to my daughter not too long ago, and you know, she's like, Dad, you know, I really want to talk to you about it, but I just don't know how. Just do. You just let God work it into the conversation. You can't just force it on somebody. He'll open the door for you. I was just telling Miss Tammy earlier that, you know, in the OR, I get surgeons for an hour, 2, 3 hours at a time. It's the perfect time. They're scrubbed. They can't break scrub. They can't get away. So we have a lot of theological discussions in my OR. I think a lot of surgeons want to hit me during the procedure because I tell them they're wrong, which is probably wrong for me to do, but they think they're God, and they rely on their own knowledge, their own wits to get them through. And you know, when you point that out to them that they're wrong, they don't take kindly to it. And that's okay, you know, because eventually, you know, you were just planting the seed. So what are some of the different ways that you can, you know, share the gospel with somebody without being ashamed of it? There's a lot of different ways. There are so many different methods, methods of evangelism that you guys can perform. It's not getting out there, you know, with your Bible, hitting people with it, saying, you need to read this, okay? Or handing out tracts. But yes, the tracts are great. You know, for people, some people, they will an amazing tool that can be used. It's something tangible they can have in their hands. But what are some of the ways that you guys can get this across without actually being embarrassed, being afraid, being intimidated by others? I'll just talk real quick about three simple ones. You can serve in evangelism. It's not going out and like being a waiter. It's not going out and, you know, doing everything for everybody. It's doing the little things. You know, opening a door for somebody. You know, chivalry's not dead. That's right. Guys especially, remember that. Okay? Open the door for a young lady. Open the door for an old lady. Open the door for a kid. It may not seem cool, but it's a good thing. You know, say thank you. Say please. You know, use your manners. I know I'm sounding like a dad. I'm really not trying to be that way. But people are going to look at you differently when you begin to embody the Spirit and you let it come out in you. And they're going to look at you and say, why are you acting like this? That's when the door's open. That's when you can work in it. You can say, it's not me, it's God. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? That's when you can go into your spiel. You know, you can say whatever, you know, wherever you're at. However, whatever is going to take, God's going to give you that